To get into our message, like I said earlier, we're going to talk about hardship and hope today. And in order to kind of get us thinking about it, I want to introduce you to one of my mentors. I've talked about mentors recently, and I look to people to inspire me, and I love to be inspired. And as I introduce this mentor to you, I ask that you don't laugh at least too much out loud, but somebody who I've looked to and gotten inspiration from is a guy named Rocky Balboa, all right? Like I said, you can just laugh a little bit, but, and for me, there's something about a guy who has a big heart. He's not the sharpest knife in the drawer, particularly if you watch the early movies, right? But he's got a big heart, and he stays in it. And my favorite of all of the movies, there's the Rocky movies and then there's the Creed movies, but my favorite is probably the one that might be the most overlooked, done about 20 years ago, which was 30 years after the original. It's called Rocky Balboa. And Rocky has, he's old, and he's way past being a fighter. Adrian, his wife, has died. He runs a little restaurant in South Philly that he really enjoys, but he's given the opportunity to box again. And he just thinks he needs to do it. It's just him and his son at this point because Adrian has passed. And his son is, in the workforce, I assume he's working at 17th and Market or something like that downtown, Liberty One. And he's really stressed out about this. And there comes a particular scene where his son comes and pulls him out of the restaurant and just challenges him, like, look, you're going to go out there, you're going to fight, and you're going to embarrass yourself, and you're going to embarrass me. I'm getting some momentum in this life. And you're going to mess it up. So let me go ahead and I'd like to read to you how Rocky responded to him. All right, don't jump ahead. All right, this is Rocky's response to his son. By the way, when I put this in my software program, I like that automatic grammar kind of thing that just pops up if there's any grammar problems. This thing was a total mess, right? This was Rocky's speech. It was not very grammatically correct. Anyway, but you can pick this up. Anyway, so this is what he says. He says, you ain't going to believe this. He says, but you used to fit right here. I'd hold you up to say to your mother, this kid's going to be the best kid in the world. This kid's going to be somebody better than anybody I ever knew. And you grew up good and wonderful, and it was great just watching you every day was a privilege. Then the time came for you to be your own man and take on the world, and you did. But somewhere along the line, you changed. You stopped being you. You let people stick a finger in your face and tell you you're no good. And when things got hard, you started looking for something to blame, like a big shadow. Let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place. And I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is going to hit as hard as life. But it ain't how hard you can hit. It's how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. Now, if you know what you're worth, go out and get what you're worth. But you got to be willing to take the hits and not pointing fingers saying you ain't where you want to be because of him or her or anybody. Cowards do that, and that ain't you. You're better than that. I'm always going to love you no matter what. No matter what happens, you're my son. You're my blood. You're the best thing in my life. But until you start believing in yourself, you ain't going to have a life. Now, that speech was ranked the most inspirational speech in movie history, according to TotalRocky.com, the website. Anyway, I say that, I read that, and one of the things that keeps me in ministry is that he's right. Life does hit hard. Life hits real hard, and it intends to keep you down and on your knees. It'll keep hitting you. And I've just seen so many people get hit, get knocked down, they just stay down. And it might not look like they've stayed down, but they just start shrinking their world. They shrink their world to something that they can control. They shrink their world down to something that will never allow them to ever be exposed to any kind of vulnerability. They shrink their world down and just keep themselves distracted with little pleasures, and they never put themselves out again. They never put themselves out there again. They lose their hope. I've gotten knocked down in ways that I'm not even ready to admit. I've gotten knocked down more times than I would like to admit. And yet God has found ways to kind of get me back up. What Rocky's speech leaves out is when you've gotten knocked down, and it's not if, it's when. When you get knocked down, how do you get back up again? How do you get back up again? And how do you get your hope to be vulnerable? How do you get your hope to be vulnerable for others? How do you get hope to be vulnerable for what God has called you to, or what you hope for, or what God has put hope in your heart for? How do you do that? This is the passage that I believe teaches that better than anything else. Why Rocky, for me, is a mentor is that as he grows older, he grows more tender. The way of the world is that as you get older, you get knocked around, life gets harder, and you get a little bit harder, you get a little bit more cynical, a little bit rougher. You allow your world to get smaller and smaller and smaller. But in the Rocky movies, as he gets older, he's more tender. He's more compassionate. He's even more hopeful. And that's what I want for me. That's what I want for everybody I know. That as we go and as we grow and as we get hit, we get up, not more hardened, but more hopeful. So I'm going to read Romans chapter 5. We're going to teach through this and see if we can learn to have a rocky heart in a hard-hearted world. So Romans chapter 5, you can follow along with me starting in verse 1. Oh, and by the way, this is in the top 5 passages of all time, passages you should memorize, seriously. Therefore, since we have been justified through faith, we have peace with God through our Lord Jesus Christ, through whom we have gained access by faith into this grace in which we now stand. And we boast in the hope of the glory of God. Not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope. And hope does not put us to shame, because God's love has been poured out into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us. You see, at just the right time, when we are still powerless, Christ died for the ungodly. Very rarely will anyone die for a righteous person, though for a good person someone might possibly dare to die. But God demonstrates his own love for us in this: while we are still sinners, Christ died for us. Since we have been justified by his blood, how much more shall we be saved from God's wrath through him? If while we were God's enemies, we were reconciled to him through the death of his son, how much more, having been reconciled, shall we be saved through his life? Not only is this so, but we also boast in God through our Lord Jesus Christ, through whom we have now received reconciliation. There's a lot in this passage. Everybody is going to suffer. We're going to feel hardship. And in order to understand this passage, we need to kind of get inside Paul's head when he says, we rejoice in our sufferings, or the passage as it says, we glory in our sufferings. Glory as a verb doesn't make a ton of sense to me. Rejoice seems a little bit better. You could use the word celebrate in our sufferings, but that might actually be pushing it. We live in a world that assumes that if you're suffering or having hardship, there's something wrong. We assume that if there's suffering, there's something wrong, and what we should do is avoid it at all costs. And what the Apostle Paul actually says is, no. The sufferings we face actually are really good and something we can celebrate. And I'm going to explain why. This passage offers the promise of both greater hope and even less disappointment. If we can receive it and get into it, we can live, like I said, evergreen lives, have a rocky heart, and a rock-hard world. All right, let me start by this. Let's start by talking about what hardship and suffering is not, okay? It's not stoicism. It's not being the drama llama, all right? It's not drama llama. It's not stoicism. It's not being the victim. When the scriptures talk a lot about suffering, it talks a lot about hardship, right? And one of the most common metaphors it uses is heat. One of the things Jesus describes, he says, what's going to happen is that people are going to hear about the message of the gospel. The seed's going to fall on the ground, and people are going to shoot up really fast, like a seed that shoots right out of the ground. Because they're really excited about the message. But when the heat of the sun comes around, when the hardships of life hits them, it's just going to wilt, right? Just like a plant that, like that weed that's popping up out of the rocks next to your driveway, right? It might pop up for now, but by July, it's going to be gone. Why? Because it doesn't have enough soil, it doesn't have enough support to make it through the heat. That's what hardship does. The heat tests us. It challenges us. Peter uses the metaphor, it's like gold that's heated in order to refine and to sort out the impurities, right? Well, I had a friend of mine who loved to cook. He loved to cook, and he loved to cook for others. And I had him at my house one time, and he was doing his thing. I forget what he was doing. All I remember is that he was looking at in the pot, and he was really, really upset. He was looking inside the pot, and he's really upset. And I'm coming over to him like, "What's going on?" He's like, "I broke the chocolate." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? Like, isn't breaking chocolate like a good thing? We're sharing the chocolate." And he's like, No. See, I broke the chocolate. And he starts explaining what's going on. When you heat chocolate to melt it for baking or whatever you do when you melt chocolate, right? If you heat it too fast, a chemical reaction will happen and all the cocoa butter will separate from the dry ingredients. And it's irreversible. It messes it up. It's like all the sweets over here and all the bitters over here because it got heated too fast. The heat breaks it. And in so many ways, that's what suffering can do to you and to me. And maybe you've seen that person who's had too much suffering too fast. It breaks us. And so to protect ourselves from it, oftentimes, one of the things many of us do is we sort of take the stoic path, right? Stoicism is sort of that way of keeping suffering from ever touching us. Maybe you know the person who's really stoic, right? They're the professional statue, right? Like nothing affects them. They've got the emotional range of okay to okay, right? And at some level that offers a certain strength to others, but quite oftentimes what ends up happening is we dehumanize ourselves when we take the stoic path. we cut ourselves off from our own pain, which also cuts ourselves off from the ability to feel other people's pain. And if you read the Bible, you'll see the patriarchs. They struggle and they fail, and they just kind of fail themselves forward all the time. And when you read the prophets, they grieve, they get angry, they have a full emotional range. And in Jesus, you see the full emotional range. Jesus is weeping a lot. He's angry at times. He's joyful at times. He has the full emotional range of a human, which is wonderful. You see in the prophets, when our name 938 is rooted in a passage where Jesus, when he looks at the crowds, he has compassion on them. The word compassion is rooted from the Latin, come with, and pathos, suffering. Suffer with others. One of the things you know that Stoicism is kicked in is when you look down on people who struggle, or look down on people who struggle in ways that you don't struggle. It means you've kind of hardened yourself to them. Compassion is when you see them struggle, you sort of feel it with them. Now, maturity keeps you from being overwhelmed by it, but Jesus had compassion. The opposite would be, the opposite of compathos is apathos, or apathy. When you're not able to feel the pain of others, it means that a stoicism is kicked in. The Apostle Paul will talk about this dynamic when he talks about how a heart gets seared. And sometimes what happens with suffering is it sears the heart. That my same friend who broke the chocolate, he was on another occasion, he was teaching me how to properly grill a steak. And this guy had strong opinions on things. And the way he grills a steak, you may do it differently, is that you heat the grill really hot in order to sear the side of the steak. And then you flip it and you heat it really just for like a minute and you sear it so that the juices stay inside of it. And there's no transfer of the moisture outside of the steak, right? What Paul says is that when you allow the hardships of life to embitter you, your heart gets seared. And so when it comes to the hurts of others, you're apathos. Their suffering doesn't hit you. And unfortunately, your own suffering doesn't hit you. And your life has to become smaller and smaller and smaller because you can't deal with what's going on out there. Because you know why? You never learn to deal with what's going on in here. All right, so that's not the way of Christian suffering. The other way of Christian suffering is in the drama llama. When you know the folks, and I've been this way. We can all be this way sometimes, right? Like where I suffer, therefore I am, right? This is the victim, and because they've been the victim, they've been victimized. They see themselves as a victim, and everybody else has control over their lives. And the way they relate to other people is through suffering. And that is a normal thing. It's okay to connect to people in suffering. But if it's the only way you know how to connect to people through your suffering or their suffering, well, your life continues to be centered in on the suffering and the hardships, and you rarely find a path towards victory or hope or change. Why? Because what's normal is the suffering. What's normal is the hardship. And all you know is how to connect through them and connect in that suffering. The gospel offers something different. And what I want to do, by the way, I'm not anti-llama. I like llamas. And so I don't want you guys to be like, this is the pastor's anti-llama. I once knew a llama named Pablo. He was really nice. We had him at a camp. Now, Pablo got loose among the children and was running around. It might have been the scariest thing I ever seen. So Pablo was large. Llamas are large. I probably will never own a llama, even though I'd like to own a llama. I'm probably more of an alpaca guy. All right, so just so you know, I am pro-llama, not anti-llama, all right? Let's talk about what the gospel does say when it comes to suffering. And the way I want to explain this is how suffering works. Chocolate can break, but we're not as fragile as chocolate. There's a book out there that describes how we can be anti-fragile. We can be anti-fragile. Anti-fragile means that when things hit you, you do not break. There's something that can happen that can make you stronger. If we can go back to the parable of the soils, there's 4 soils. One, the seed falls on the hard ground. The birds come pick it up. Nothing happens with it. One seed falls into rocky soil because it's rocky. The rocks are warm. The seed bursts forth really quickly, right? And then there's 2 other soils that are rich where the plant actually can start really, really growing, right? The difference between the rocky soil and the good soil is that there's enough soil around it to support it through hard times. I've been in the Grand Canyon, which is like the worst place to grow anything ever. It's just like 100 degrees and dry all the time during the day, and then it's like 50 degrees at night, and there's just never any rain. But plants grow there. You can grow a plant there. People can thrive in the most difficult of conditions. A plant can thrive in the most difficult conditions. What do those plants have that enables them to thrive? They've got enough soil around them to support them. That's why when it comes to hardships and challenges, this is not a message for individuals. This becomes a message to a community. What enables people to thrive through hardship? Strong community. When you pack people with support, they can endure the most difficult of challenges in life when they have people around them to support them. That's one of the reasons we do Growth Track. There's no such thing as like a believer that just kind of functions on their own. People need one another. We want to see people a part of groups and teams so that nobody could ever fall through the cracks, because if you're going through hardship alone, it's going to be hard. It will knock you down. It will keep you down. What continues to get Rocky up? Every single Rocky movie is the same thing, right? He's kind of dumb and things kind of go badly, but he gets an opportunity and he's foolish enough to say yes to the opportunity. And next thing you know, he's entirely overmatched and everybody knows he's going to lose. And what ends up happening? Well, Apollo shows up and Mickey shows up and Paulie shows up and Adrian says, okay, I can't believe I'm doing this, but I'm going to let my husband get his brain bashed in again. And next thing you know, there's music and there's workouts. And then next thing you know, he steps into it. Why? Because he had the support that he needed. You will get hit and you will get knocked down. And that's why we build community. That's why it's one of our values, that we build community, because everybody gets hit, gets knocked down. What's going to be the difference that helps us up? When we help one another get up in the face of those challenges. I like putting wood. I like burning wood on cold evenings, but sometimes I put too much wood in the fire and it's time to go to bed. And Kathleen's like, you can't leave a burning fire. I'm like, it's probably going to be okay. And she's like, no. Okay, so what do I do? What do I do to make sure the fire goes out? I separate the wood from one another. Once I separate the wood from one another, the fire is going to go out. And a person who thinks they're going to keep their faith vibrant by themselves, it's just not going to work. It's why we build community. All right, so let me talk about how suffering works, partly through support, but there's a specific process that Paul talks about. He says it begins with glorying in the hope of Christ. And when you have enough hope, you will suffer. Anybody who has hope suffers. If you think that your life will be better getting married, you will suffer marriage. If you think your life will be better with kids, you will suffer having children. If you think your life will be better owning a car, you will suffer a car payment, right? Hope always leads to suffering. It's okay. It just is what it is. I'm going to the Phillies game with my brother tonight, and I will suffer the traffic. I will suffer the traffic. Hope always leads to suffering, right? But if you will stay in it, the Apostle Paul says, suffering will give you perseverance. Perseverance will build your character. And as your character grows, your hope will expand. Your hope will expand, just like Rocky, right? You know, Rocky, he hopes he might win the fight, right? And so he'll suffer the training. He perseveres in the training. The character of his body gets stronger. His confidence gets stronger. And at the end of the training, right, at the end of the song, you know, he has more hope to win the battle than he did before. Today, you got up this morning and you said you had enough hope to go to church. You're like, I'll suffer the traffic. I'll suffer the possibility of rain. And I will suffer not knowing where I'm going to park, and I'm going to persevere that. And you know, we'll hope the message works out, and maybe my character will be better. And hopefully, by the end of today, you'll be like, oh yeah, I'm more likely. I have more hope to attend church next week than I did this week. Maybe I'll even become a default worshiper every single Sunday, right? That's how hope grows. My daughter had hoped that she was going to be on the volleyball team in high school, but she didn't want to go to camp. And we had to do everything we could to help her suffer being a freshman and not knowing anybody at volleyball camp. She didn't know if she was going to be the worst, it's going to be terrible, she was going to have any friends. But by the time she came home, after persevering through the first day of camp, she said, let's go get some sneakers because I need to play volleyball. Her hope of playing volleyball increased because she suffered the challenges of it. And it's how hope grows. This is what we do when it comes to regeneration. You may know about our recovery ministry that helps people walk through the 12 steps to see healing happen in their lives. And it's real work. It's real work, and people will suffer the work, and they'll go through some of the challenges and the wounds they've experienced in life. And what'll end up happening is God will use those times to heal them, expand their character, and not just have hope for their own lives, they have hope for other people's lives. And this is how ministry happens, right? When we see God work in our lives through suffering, and as we're able to persevere, as he grows our character, we not only have hope to put ourselves out there and be more vulnerable, we have hope for others as well. It's how ministry happens. It's how the world changes when you go through difficulties and you find that God shows up with you. You not only have more hope for yourself, you have hope for everybody else. But here's the thing. Hardship will refine our hope. Okay, Tim Keller told this story. He said, look, let's just imagine somebody right after church decides they're going to take a crowbar and go smack me in the knee with it. And you go to the doctor, and while you're sitting with the doctor, he says, well, you can keep walking, you can keep running, you keep playing basketball, but no more ice skating. You can't do any more figure skating. I'm good with that. I'm good with that. But what if you're a figure skater? Hardship hits people differently. Hardship is different for different people, and our hopes get refined. Every time I go out to play golf, I'm like, today's the day I'm going to break 90 again, right? But generally speaking, the hardship of being out on that course changes my hopes. And so when I leave there, I'd be like, well, you know, it was really nice to be outside, right? And the truth of the matter is that is what my real hope is when it comes to golf, is a really nice long day walking outside. Our hope gets expanded. I'm going to the Phillies game tonight. I've been a Phillies fan long. I have suffered. I have persevered. And my character has grown to where my real hope at the Phillies game tonight is to spend time with my brother. It's been refined. Whether the Phillies win or lose, I'm going to be fine. What I'm doing tonight, I'm going to suffer the traffic. I'm going to suffer the price of parking. I'm going to suffer the price of whatever I eat or drink, not because I'm there to see the Phillies win. That's not where my hope lies. My hope lies tonight in being with my brother. See, hardship refines where our hope should really be. What I explained is the generic process of how all hope is formed. Let me talk about the singular starting point for how God activates our specific hope in what he has done for our lives, and how that starting point will enable us to persevere any kind of hardship and to have a hope that keeps us evergreen. All right, the singular starting point is he says, we rejoice in the hope of being like above average suburbanite. No, he says, we rejoice in the hope of the glory of God. Now, what does all that mean? The glory of God means that God is doing something through the resurrection where he is renewing all things, that he is restoring you to the glory that he intended for you. He's not just trying to get you through life. He's doing something. He's making you like Jesus. Through this passage, he's going to say twice, he's going to say that he has justified you. What does he mean by justification? He means that he's given you all the rights and privileges of belonging within the family of God. That he has, by raising Jesus from the dead, he has acted in justice to fix what was wrong. It was totally wrong that Jesus was held accountable for our sins and the sins of the world. It was totally wrong that the political leaders and the religious leaders came together against him. He made right that wrong, which means that he's going to make right all the wrongs in this world. He's going to glorify himself by refining this world, making this world the way it ought to be, making each and every one of us the way we ought to be. And yes, it might feel sometimes like the hard moments of a Rocky movie as he takes us through hardship in order to refine us, to polish us, because now we have peace with God. He says this is how God shows love for us, that he allowed his son to, while we were still sinners, while we were his enemies, he died for us. He is willing to go through the ultimate suffering for the hope of revealing his glory in this world. Think about kids. If you when you realize that suffering is relative to each person, nobody suffers more than kids. You just come around 9:15, 9:10 and hang around here. We got kids all over the place, and they're always banging their heads, scraping their knees. They're crying about this thing. They're crying about that thing. Mom's not here. Mom's there. Mom's up on the stage. Why isn't she with me? Kids go through all sorts of difficulties, and nobody suffers more than children. Right? They do. Like, they're bang, like, particularly, maybe it was me. Like, I felt like my entire childhood, I had blood coming out of my knee. And it's like a really, really good thing that I, at this age, don't fall down as much as those kids do. Right? God has to keep them small with all the times they fall down, right? But they're okay. And why are they okay? Because you got a lot of soil packed around them. And there's always somebody saying, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. I'm with you. And there's always somebody pick them up and remind them that they're loved and they're cared for, and they bounce back. And what Paul's saying in this message, this is the crescendo of 4 chapters, where for 4 chapters he's saying, look, our sins have alienated ourselves from God. But he says, look, you need to understand, we now have peace with God. We have reconciliation with God. Now when you fall down, you are not alone in that anymore. Just like when you were a kid and somebody picked you up, now you have the very presence of God with you, so that when you do not get knocked down in this world, you are not alone. You have the Father, you have the family of God. You will never be alone. The hope of the glory of God is that when you do face hardship, just like when you were a kid, there's someone there to say, you can do this. You can do this. Get back up and keep moving forward. You are not alone. The reason why we stay down when we get knocked down as we feel like we're alone. And we wonder if anybody really cares. God never stops caring. God never stops caring. He sees you when you get knocked down. He sees the blood. He sees the hurt. He sees the wound. He sees your unwillingness to get vulnerable again. He sees your unwillingness to hope again. And he says, no, keep hoping. Keep hoping. He says this, God demonstrates his love for you in this: while you were sinners, while you were in rebellion against him, while you were his enemy. Not when you got things together, not when you were getting it right, but when you were at your worst, he died for you. So keep getting back up. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they're holding on to hope in a place where people were really opposed to God. And the king at that time says, you need to bow down to me. I'm building this huge statue. And I want everybody to honor this thing and make it really important it's going to be really important that everybody in my kingdom honors me and my big statue. And they said, we can't do that because we honor God. And the king's like, oh, is that how it's going to be? Well, this is what we're going to do. We're going to anybody who doesn't obey is going to get thrown into this fiery furnace. And the heat of this thing so hot that even the guards that got near it died from it. Well, and they took Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego and threw them into this fiery furnace. And when they got thrown into the fiery furnace, everybody just kind of leaned in and said, what? As they went into the fiery furnace, they didn't fall down, they didn't get knocked down, they continued to stand there. They walked around in the fire, and it was really, really clear that they weren't alone. 3 men were thrown into the fire, but 4 men walked around in the fire because God was going to stand with them. They weren't going to be alone in the worst sufferings of all. There was another in the fire with them. And no matter whatever fire, whatever heat, and whatever challenge, however this world knocks you down and tries to keep you down, you will never be alone in that. You'll never be alone. All the support you need to keep your heart soft and warm and open to others will always be there. On another occasion, the Apostle Paul, speaking about this very thing, says this. Therefore, we do not lose heart. Though outwardly we are wasting away, and that's going to happen to all of us. This body's going to waste away. All of us are going to waste away. Therefore, we do not lose heart, though outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day, for our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen, since what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. Would you stand with me and let's pray?